So I am back with another one of my catching up videos after my long break. This is part 3 and I hope that you did see the other 2. If not, please check them out. They're right here on my channel. So today again I will have 2 projects for you, starting with this lion here, which is another junk sculpture. He was created on an oval background and I love the way he fills out the full space. I started out with a thrift store canvas. Now the price on this is $4, which tells you that these are pretty old. I had 2 of them. So in order to make them suitable for assemblage work, I added 3 layers of cardboard to the back here, right inside the indentation, and then decoupaged brown craft paper in bits and pieces all around the back, the front, and especially the sides. Because these are fairly old canvases, they had these very strong staples on the edges, and the paper covered that up nicely. So for this project I will have a few photos. The next project will be covered with video footage. Here you can see pretty well what I used in order to make this face. I started with some kids' balls, an orange and yellow one. I cut them apart and attached them again in order to achieve this oval shape. Now the tip of his nose is another cover from an electric shaver and I cut it to size. The bridge is just a piece of plastic. And so are most pieces on his cheek and around his eyes. Some packaging, there are some hair curlers, there are a couple of toys, but mostly bottle tops, etc. The eyes were 2 hard plastic marbles, and I added spoons and curved beads for eyelids. The ears are 2 round wood pieces. I added some chain, and you can see the curler also on his forehead. And then, of course, the mane was made by using Mardi Gras beads, which are really handy because they don't come apart when you cut them in little pieces. And here's the next step. I added several pieces of jewelry, that big zigzag on his nose. Underneath are a bunch of chains to kind of cover that whole plastic bit, and quite a few other jewelry elements that I added here and there just to bring in more texture, more interest, and fill in any gaps I had, and so on. I covered some of the very smooth areas with some cheesecloths and then added also some texture paste just here and there. Before it was ready to be spray painted with some matte black paint, and this is the way it looked after that. And then of course I added some color to him, but first let me show you a few more details. There are roses in his ears. There's a nice piece of jewelry on his forehead. I love the zigzag on his nose. I think it gives him some character. These dots down here are ear studs, which were easy enough to poke right into him. And here you can see one more time all around his base. Now when I started coloring him, I realized that in reality lions are pretty yellow golden. They don't have a lot of variety in the way of color. So rather than making him all yellow, his mane, his eyes and so on, I decided on adding the teal. Yes, it's not a realistic look, but none of my pieces are realistic anyway. So I like this accent. I used teal acrylic paints on the eyes together with some glossy varnish. I also used it on just some of the strands of the mane. The mane also got some copper and amber paint as well as waxes, and that together with a wee bit of gold rub and buff on the face completed the look. I like this guy a lot and I hope you do too. Here is already the substrate I found for my next project, which will be rather large. It's a sentiment board I found at a thrift store. It has a decent frame and I altered it by adding this platform made from plywood. It has some interesting angles and I held it on with a piece of wood. This thing is pretty sturdy, but I will add all kinds of elements to it, but most will also be glued against the background, so the platform does not have to support the full weight. So here you see some of the things I pulled out to start with. There are small boxes of different shapes and sizes. There are some small drawers. I have some cubes and just odds and ends of wooden shapes left over from other projects. At this point, I'm planning to do something of a fantasy city or a laboratory. I couldn't really make up my mind. And in the course of putting this together, I decided to let the elements just lead me into whatever this may turn out to be. Now these two pieces are made from plastic. The one with the holes is meant to measure drill bits. The other one, no idea. So here you see me getting started. I want to put them down in an interesting formation. I want some layering. I want different dimensions. So this took me a while of fiddling. Working on this was a bit difficult. First of all, the substrate is really large. As you can see, it doesn't properly fit on my desk. So filming was tough and editing was even worse because I changed my mind so many times. But I kept in everything that I think made sense, and I of course will explain where needed. Now from here on, I will just glue things down. I will add more elements to it, and I think I turn you over to some music. Like always, you will find anything you need to know in the captions, and I will be back chatting with you in just a wee bit. Enjoy. background is not quite done yet, but I started using some silver rub and buff on some of the elements. But first I want to add some unpainted items as well. So there are some springs, there's a top of an old-fashioned cigarette lighter, I have a tea egg, another little strainer, and a few other things, and later on you will get a close-up look of all of those. I enjoy the look I get when I add some unpainted or original bits to my assemblages after spray painting, as it brings more contrast and interest. So next I have a couple of big gears, and I embellish them by using original little watch parts. Now I attach both of these to some old computer parts that rotate, so that makes them move as well. And then I continued with rub and buff and my waxes, mostly silver, pink, and teal. I used both my fingers and brushes, and it really brought out all the textures and all the little details. So here it's all done. I added a bit of my distress ink and more waxes to the background to achieve this little bit grungy look, and it also brought out the texture from the paper. Then I used my Stabilo oil to go all around the edges. I followed it up with some water for some shading. Now the very edge of the frame is black, and let me show you the other side. Now the thing is quite heavy and a little bit hard to move around. That's why I gave it a strong hanger with wire, D-rings, and screws. And here you can see my light chain, and of course it has a battery box, and I will definitely add a photo at the end where you can see what this looks like from the other side in the dark. But let me start by pointing out some details. Now this piece has a lot of hidden corners, and because the light in here is not the best, I will go outside and make a video for you where the sunlight should help you see everything very clearly. But for now, let's talk about some of the bits and pieces on here. I made this banister here from old-fashioned clothespins. There's a piece you rest your chopsticks on, a dowel, and then of course the chain. Now the chain is cut here in the middle and hangs down so that this door can open freely. And that's of course my focal point. There are some pink and teal elements, a skull, wings, I used inks, there's a little mirror, and so on. So over here on the left we have a propeller that turns. We also have a glass bottle with some teal slime. We have a pink stone, some silver elements. There is a light bulb, tiny little charms over there, a gear, the camera charm, and then this hand that came from a different assemblage. There is a teal marble, there's a witch's head on a chair, and there's a little lantern that also has a little pink. There is a wheel here that turns freely. And then of course here on the door is a nice jewel, and then this, which is a miniature urn. I hope the little ashes that are left in there are from someone that likes art or has a sense of humor. There's a tiny toy Land Rover, there's a miniature washboard, the clock hands, of course, the big gear that turns, and behind the washboard there's actually a person. You can see the head peeking out on the top and the shoes down on the bottom. Wherever I found a suitable spot or little container, I added lots more tiny little charms. I also found this kid's toy of a birthday cake, and it's hidden just a little bit behind the propeller. Now this thing bends a bit, it also turns, and it has a silver screw which I added wherever there was a possibility. Now over here on the right you can see the eagle emblem, that piece, and the hand, and actually the clock hands and the propeller as well came from an assemblage I'd taken apart recently. So there's another toy that turns, and then this really cool silver gate. Behind it are 3 bottles with pink and teal colors. Then here in the front we have this eyeball in blue with a little chain. And then of course more elements here on the side. I used lace and bling and lots of other things to create texture on all the flat surfaces. I also added some hanging things. Here is an old light. Here is a combination of a bead and just a metal bit. And then this funnel. Now It was a leftover piece from another project and already had all these charms added to it, and that inspired me to add more charms to the platform and on top of some of the boxes. Here you can see that I use brad ties underneath the platform, and over here we have a bit more slime in pink. There's a tiny sign in teal and pink, that nice big gear that turns, and that lovely piece from the old lighter. Another one also springs. Then these elements came either from a Monopoly game or a similar game. And down here is a watch. And now here in the very depth are two spiders. Very hard to see, but the sunlight will reveal all. Then over here we have a little bell I made from a thimble with a blue bead, another movable part, a little flag, and probably lots and lots more details. Now this was definitely a doozy of a project. I think I worked on it for over 2 weeks, and although enjoyable, I think I am going to stick with a little bit smaller and simpler projects in the future. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed this. I look forward to your feedback on this as well as on the lion. I should be back soon. Take care. Bye bye for now.